that feeling of not being wanted and that feeling of being almost hated, resented.
I call this the community of nodding heads because right now you have so many people listening to you and nodding along with what you said. Hello, you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I am your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an Ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for Not Parent Expected or Non-Paternal Event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. Welcome to episode 210. Today I am speaking with Julie S. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Lily.
It's so nice to be able to speak with you today. Thank you for taking the time and doing this with me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. So let's get into your family of origin so I can learn about you. Who was in your raising family and what was your childhood like?
All right. So I was the first of 5 children, my mom's children. And she and my dad were married and they were like young. My mom was 18 and my dad was 21. And I was born when my mom was 21 and my dad was 24. This was 1963. And I guess they'd been trying for a while to have a baby after they got married. And I was their first one, born 3 years after they got married. Dad was a great dad. He went to work every day. He brought home the bacon. He made sure, he did the traditional 1950s, 1960s dad thing. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. I remember them really didn't get along. They fought a lot, but they were also really interesting kind of young energy people. Dad was, he was my dad. I loved him. He was a good father to me and my brothers, and never once. I mean, we butted heads on various political issues as I got older because our politics were really different. But he was stable. He was solid. He was very committed to being a dad and never treated me any different. My younger brothers came along and we were a family. And my mom and dad were always having fights and always troubled. But I guess one day my dad, on his way back from work, brought home this hitchhiker to help him, because his vehicle had broken down. It was a Volkswagen van. And he brought him to the house, and him and his friend. And they were given a meal and a bath, and Dad brought them back to the city the next day so that, they could repair their vehicle and be on their way. Well, my mom kind of got feelings for one of the hitchhikers, and then a couple years later, my parents divorced and my mom married the one hitchhiker, and he became my stepfather, having 2 more children. So my dad wasn't exactly out of the picture, but he did move out. He gave my mom everything and went and started his life again, but he kept us in his life. He would always, send us gifts. We would visit him on weekends. He would take us to get new clothes for Christmas, him and my grandma, things like that. And my stepfather was English and we ended up moving to England. I mean, there's a lot of backstory here. We ended up, actually, before England, we moved to Mexico in a Volkswagen van, and my sister was born down there, but she needed medical attention. So we moved to England for the socialized medicine, which we could get because he was English. And we moved to England. So my dad would fly us from England in the summer, and we'd spend the summer with him, me and my brothers. So Dad was involved all the way through. Like he was on my birth certificate. He was just, the only dad that I really knew of that was my dad. But my stepfather wasn't such a good father. He was not, I don't know. I don't want to get into a whole bunch of stuff that he was just not a good guy for us.
I understand.
Yeah, so when I left home at 16, I moved in with my dad because, dad was willing to take us on, and it was my choice to live with him. I wanted to get away from my stepfather and my mom, who were, not good to me. They were pretty abusive. And I didn't understand it. I felt like I was being singled out. I didn't really understand why I was different from my brothers and why they treated me differently. But, I came to find out later why. Well, it seems like that was the reason anyway, that I was an NPE. And my mom knew about it. My stepfather knew about it because she confided in him.
Oh, so you felt that they treated you differently as a kid. You could feel
They
it.
absolutely did. Even my brothers said they did. And my cousins who observed the way they treated me, they didn't understand why I was being, singled out and, frankly abused. It was not fun. But, my dad on my birth certificate always treated me like his little girl, his daughter. He loved me, and he didn't make me feel like I was unwanted or anything ever.
So you moved in with your dad when you were 16.
One of my brothers moved as well. My other brother stayed with mom because I think he felt like he was in between a rock and a hard place, because he was kind of felt like he had to stay with her because the other two left, the oldest two, and I don't know. There's different.
Yeah.
I guess he had his own reasons. I'm not going to speculate too much. He did move in with dad later, a couple years later, but then the three of us were all together.
Do you resemble your brothers or your mom?
Not real. I resemble my mother.
Yep.
And my whole time growing up, everybody would tell me, "You look just like your mother. You look just like your mother." And it would start to get a little bit annoying because I would look at my dad and say, "Yeah, but why don't I look like my dad?" It's confusing because my brothers look like him and I look like my mom and they look a little bit like my mom. And you could see family resemblance, but you couldn't see any family resemblance between me and my dad. One day I asked my dad, "So, do I look like you or anybody in your family?" And he said, "Well, you have the high forehead like me and my dad. And, I guess that's what you got from me." So I accepted that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was no resemblance really at all.
And you said you've since found out that your mom confided in your stepdad at some point in your childhood about the truth, which
Yes.
by the way, Julie, I completely identify with. When I found out I was an NPE, I found out my stepdad had also known from my mom. So I know
Right.
I know what you're talking about
feeling.
there.
Yeah, it feels like a betrayal.
Yes, but they never told you they never told you this as a child?
No. But okay, this is a little weird. My mom did involve my biological father at certain points in my life because she kept him abreast of everything I was doing. She would write to him, and sometimes she would go visit him and, tell him what what was going on. And there was a couple of times that I recall him coming to visit me when I was a little girl, and some conversations that we had that were, if I was more aware, like in retrospect, I can see these conversations were very telling. But yeah, I was about 8 years old. I remember he came to visit before my parents got divorced. And it was actually right after he and his wife got divorced and he came back to America. He was in England. He visited my mother and me, and I didn't know he came to visit me too, but he did spend some time with me. A little aside is that he's a artist. He's a painter and a illustrator and book author. So my mom wanted him to, look at my art because I was the artist of the family. And he was very curious about me and curious about my art, and we spent a little time chatting. And I remember him, he had an English accent. He smelled good. He was very well dressed. He had a tweed jacket and a black turtleneck and just a well-groomed, nice looking guy, but older. He was quite a bit older than my mom. He was 48 when I was born and my mom was 21.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was a weird little May-December love affair, I guess. He was a friend of my father's. And my mom and dad and him and my biological father's wife met at an art show that my biological father was exhibiting in back in 1961, around that time. And they became friends, drinking buddies. They would go out together. They would, they got to know each other pretty well. And I guess back in the 60s, one of those things was, wife swapping and swinging and key parties and all that. And that's one of those things that they indulged in. And so, yeah, I'm kind of a product of that.
So your birth certificate father, did he know that you weren't his biologically?
Yep, he did. And he didn't treat me any different. He, I think, in fact, he might have even treated me a little bit better. I don't know if it's because I was a girl or because of my birth situation, but he claimed me. He put his name on my birth certificate, and he never let on that he knew. And the only reason I know that he knew is because I asked him. Before he passed away a couple years ago, but I had that conversation with him, and it was really hard to talk to him about it, but boy, he said, "Does it make a difference?" I said, "No, Dad. You're my dad." He said, "Yep." So yeah, that was intense. But you know what I mean. It's a crazy thing to find out when you're 57 years old. The man that you just adored so much. And I found out, it was kind of a crazy way to find out, but there was no doubt about it. And I gave it a little time for it to sink in before I asked anybody. I asked my mom at first, and then I asked my dad, and they both confessed at different times. But boy, that was the hardest one, was talking to my dad about it, because I didn't want him to think any less of me if he knew and I knew. He just didn't want me to be hurt. He didn't tell me because he didn't want me to be hurt.
I can feel that love, and I'm so sorry for the loss of your birth certificate father. I'm sorry for the loss of your dad.
I was real lucky to have him, though, because he was so good to me. He was a good person in my life. I think he was kind of the antidote to my stepfather and my mom, the way they treated me. He helped me heal a lot of stuff. Helped me recover from that awful, that feeling of not being wanted, and that feeling of being almost hated, resented.
Yeah. And children take that on, and they feel like they're bad when they feel unwanted.
I really did.
Yeah.
I moved away from my whole family to get away from that feeling. And I lived in New York City for 33 years. And I think that was so important for me to learn who I was outside of the context of the family that already had decided who I was, and pegged me as the bad kid or the bad seed or the black sheep or whatever they thought I was, a scapegoat. And I know it's cliche and everything, that's how we feel, but it's actually legitimate. It does happen a lot to NPs.
Yes, it does. You were in scapegoat status for so long. Do you feel like you still are? Is that still the dynamic in your family?
It is on their end, but not everybody. I can't say everybody, because there's some family members who see me as someone who's really claimed my own identity, my existence, and re-identified myself, and they see that I'm not the person that they thought I was. And the people who still see me as the bad seed or the scapegoat, they're not in my life, including my mother.
How long has she not been in your life?
Well, when she found out that I told other people in the family about my birth, my DNA surprise, she was angry, and she told me, get out of my house. And we didn't have a fight per se. I just left quietly, but I did say she said I was selfish. And I said, Mom, if you feel that way, I understand, but also it's pretty selfish keeping a a secret like that from me, like that who's my father, like if it was done to you, what would you feel? She just didn't have any words. She was so angry because I claimed my story. I'm not mad about it. The only thing I'm mad about is that my mother isn't accepting of the fact that I have a right to know and I have a right to speak my truth. And I've been ostracized. But you know what? It was going that way anyway. I felt ostracized even before. So it's not like a new feeling, it's just solidified.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is actually a culmination of an entire lifetime of that kind of a dynamic between me and her. The last time I saw her was at one of my uncle's funerals, and I attempted to give her a hug. I went up to her and I said, "I'm really sorry, Mom. I know you loved, Uncle, your brother." And I put my arms around her, and she stiffened up and pulled away and gave me a dirty look. And I was just astonished that you could actually do that to a child of yours that you gave birth to. Like, there's nothing that I've ever done to that woman that would warrant that kind of reaction.
Yeah.
At all. I've never taken anything away from her. I did, speak my truth, and which happened to be a secret that she was keeping, and I don't want to be a dirty secret.
Yeah.
That's not that's not an option. I exist, and I'm glad I'm here.
The way she's responded to you since you found out you were an NPE is something I hear over and over again. It's her behavior.
Yeah.
That's so hurtful. Did she or anyone in your family, well, I guess, did she check in on you and ever ask, "Are you okay?" or say,
No.
"I'm sorry"?
No, not once. The only thing she did was say, "You must never tell anyone." And she tried to make me promise. I said, "I can't promise that, Mom. I have to think about what I'm going to do." And I gave it a year before I did tell extended family, because I have a sister that I didn't know about. I have nieces, and we're in contact, and I didn't want to hide them. I wanted to claim them. They claimed me. So I don't want to say, "Well, I can't tell anybody because my mom would be upset." Like, my days of not of worrying about if my mom is going to be upset are long over, because everything upsets her, and I'm just not going to play that game anymore.
Yeah, this was just the final straw for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't anything. I think she thinks of it as like being petty or vengeful, or like trying to take her down or something like that, and it's nothing to do with that. It's her reaction to what I've done and what I've said that takes her down. She doesn't have to. I told her at one point, I said, "Mom, you're 80 years old. You lived a life. You should be proud of your achievements, and it's not a big deal anymore. Everybody would, nobody would care at this point.
Yeah.
They think of you as an eccentric or a quirky lady or whatever. And who cares what people think, honestly? Who cares? Living your life based on your mortification or your shame is unhealthy." And I try to encourage her just to stand up and, stick her chest out and say, "This is me. This is who I am. This is what I did. This is my life. If you don't like it, that's your problem, not mine."
Yeah.
But she couldn't go there. I think she's just got a deeply ingrained sense of shame, and I don't know where that comes from. I think that was pre-existing before I was born.
Yes. So is your stepdad still around?
He and my mom divorced.
Okay.
He left her for younger women and took all their money. So yeah, and my sister, who was born in Mexico, she passed away, and I have a younger brother. My youngest brother, he lives in England. He has kids, and I haven't seen him in years, but sometimes we email each other.
So now let's talk about your birth father. It sounds like you may be in touch with some new family members on that
Yes.
side. How is that going?
It's interesting. Well, let me tell you how I found out. It's
Yeah.
a bit of a funny story. So about, I don't know, 6 years ago, I was visiting her, and this is before I found out about the DNA. And she said, "Hey, just curious, would you be interested in doing a DNA test? Because I bought one for your brothers, and I want to get you one too. Would you take it if I bought it for you?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I'm curious." And because we got some Native American, and I was always curious to find out how much. And so she said, "All right, I'll buy you a test, and, let me know the results." So I took the test. The results were, not immediate. I didn't find out immediately about my father's side, but I did find out about the Native American. There's a bit in there, and there's a lot of English and European, like Western European and French, whatever, different Scottish. And I thought that's more than the more than I expected, let's put it that way. And also, neither of my brother's DNA came up on the line online. So I'm thinking, I wonder why we're not connecting. Usually it tells you there's someone, that you're related to. I thought, well, maybe they didn't take the test. Maybe they declined. So I showed the thing to my mom. She's like, "Huh, interesting. You had a lot of English." And I think that was her way of confirming to herself that I was Cedric's. Although I look like him, undeniably. I look just like him. I think more than my mom, I look like him. And my kids do too. So fast forward a couple of years, and I get a little ping that says, "You have a new relative." So I look at it, and it says first cousin or closer. And I thought, first cousin or closer? This person lives in Ireland, and I don't recognize the name. How strange. And I reached out to her, and I said, "Do you know how we're related?" She's like, "Oh my goodness, we've been looking for you for 15 years. Is your name Julie?" And then she named my parents' names, and she said, "You're my auntie. My mom is your sister." And I said, "What?" I was thinking my father had an affair with a lady in Ireland, maybe when he was visiting us when we were little kids in England. Turns out that it's a sister who is 11 years older than me. And I thought, well, that's impossible because Dad would have been about 12 years old when she was born. And I said, "How is that possible?" And she's like, "Do you remember does the name Cedric sound familiar to you?" I said, "Yes, actually, he's a friend of the family. He used to visit us when we were little." She said, "Well, that's my grandfather, my mother's father." And it took me a minute. And then I was devastated. I broke into tears. I said, "I can't believe this is happening." Not in a freak out kind of way, but like my first thought was like, "Oh my God, I wonder if my dad knows. What's he going to think? It's going to devastate him if he finds out that, he's not my biological father." And she said, "Well, this is the story that I got. When your parents were," she said, your father probably knows for a start. She said, "When your parents were trying to conceive and they couldn't conceive, your parents came to my grandfather and asked," well, he was in his late 40s back then, "and asked if he would mind being the donor because they were trying to conceive a child, and they would like, him to be the father because of his artistic genes. They wanted an artistic child." So he agreed. And it was also a way for my birth certificate dad to, stay out of the military, because I think they were recruiting for Vietnam back then. And if you had a baby on the way, then you didn't have to go. He and my mom ended up having an affair. My mom had feelings for him. She didn't want him to go back to England. She wanted him to leave his wife and be with her. And he said no, because, his family was, he had 3 kids and his wife. And incidentally, his wife and my dad, my biological or my birth certificate dad, were having an affair simultaneously. So that it was just a weird little thing that happened. And according to my biological father, I was planned, I was wanted, and I was, conceived with intention. My mom, on the other hand, when I told her, actually, I went to my mom and I said, Mom, were you ever going to tell me that Cedric's my biological father? I just said it point blank because I'm a little bit, straight to the point kind of person. And she just went white as a ghost. And she said, how'd you find out? I said, remember that DNA test you bought me? He's like, oh my God. So she's like, well, I was never going to tell you. I was going to take it to my grave. And I said, well, can you tell me now? Can you tell me how it went down? And she's like, I said, was it, were you coerced? Were you, forced? She said, no, I loved him. I was in love with him. He was, I wanted him to leave his wife for me. I wanted to be with him. I was very upset when he went back to England. I felt connected to his children. I wanted to step in and be their mom. And I'm like, well, they were only like 10 years younger than you. But anyway, the age thing was a little weird. But she said, then when he went back to England, I just kind of went through with having you, and, your dad put his name on the birth certificate and we never told anybody. So yeah, but she said, now you can't tell anybody. And I said, well, I kind of don't know if I'm going to or not, but it's new information to me. I'm going to give it some time. I'm going to process it. I did tell my children right away. And they said, well, Grandpa's still our grandpa. I said, yes, he is. Absolutely. Nothing changed. And my youngest child especially looks like my biological father, which is weird, but kind of beautiful. I mean, because when they were born, I was thinking, who do they look like? I mean, they look like me, but they don't look like their dad. And it definitely was, I wasn't fooling around or anything. Then I saw a picture of my biological father and I thought, that's who they look like. My goodness. It's so interesting seeing their faces. And then one of my nieces sent me a video of family home videos on a CD that were from the 1918, 1920, 1940s. Oh my goodness, they're so interesting. And seeing my biological father running around in his school uniform and playing with cats and all sorts of things. And I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, he looks just like my kids. It's crazy. It's so amazing. Like, DNA is really amazing.
Gosh, that must be so surreal to see those videos and be like, these look like my children.
Yep. And seeing his mother, my grandmother, who is a prolific children's book illustrator and author in her own right. And she was quite like a bit of a pioneer for her generation. She did a lot. She earned her own money. She, paid for her own apartment. She was very, very advanced. But she had, she was quite well known for her time. And I saw her with my biological father on probably his 21st birthday. And just the way they interacted reminded me of me and my kids. And she and I look quite a bit alike. So it's a huge gift to be able to see these people, because sometimes you don't even get a single picture. And I was so grateful to my niece for sending me that. It meant a lot to me. And I found out about my sister and I reached out to her and we corresponded for about a year. And then she kind of pulled back a little bit. And I understand, because it does take some, processing, I think, to know, like, she'd known about me, because before my biological father died, he told her, he said, my oldest brother, I had two brothers, both of them passed. So she was by herself. And when my biological father was, knew he was dying, he told her, he said, I don't want you to be alone. You have another sister. You have a sister, and she lives in America, and she's, she lives in New York City, and, try and go find her. And so she told my nieces, she has 3 daughters, and they all were looking for me on Facebook, but there's a bunch of people with my last name. And so it was really hard for them to find me. But finally we connected through the DNA thing.
Oh my goodness. So your birth father told your sister about you before he died. Wow.
He carried a baby picture of me in his wallet, apparently.
Oh
I
my.
think he wanted to be in my life, but my mom her secret was so precious to her that she refused to let him be openly acknowledged as my biological father. So a lot of people knew my biological father, my birth certificate father, my stepfather, my mother, anybody else that she told, whoever, maybe nobody, but those were the ones that I know knew.
And your mother, is she American?
Mm-hmm.
But I just happened to notice that she's been with 2 British men. So
Exactly. Bit of an
Nope.
Anglophile, I think. She, I think was, when the Beatles were popular and everybody was going crazy for the British invasion.
Yes, she had a type. Yeah.
At a type. And she still goes back to England every year to visit people, my brother and my nephews. But yeah, I don't know if her and I will ever reconcile. I've done nothing wrong, and I feel like it's kind of like the ball's in my mom's court, and if she wants to have a relationship, she has to do a little bit of work on herself that is going to make it easier for both of us, because this hot cold push pull volatile hair trigger reactions to anything I do is just tired. It's not good for me to keep on trying that with that person, because you're always doing a dance, and it's always they're the leader, and I want to have a healthy relationship with my mother. I don't know if it's possible at this point, but I think I'm okay with either way. It's got to be healthy for me, though.
I call this the community of nodding heads because right now you have so many people listening to you and nodding along with what you said in agreement. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I tried so many times, so many years, and I'm not saying I'm a perfect person, because I'm not. I don't think any of us are, but if your intentions are to make something work and evolve your relationship with a certain person, and they're absolutely not doing their part, they don't want to. They just want to keep it the way it was.
Mm.
They want you to tiptoe. They want you to dance. They want you to kowtow and make them happy and just play their game, and it's not healthy.
Yeah. Where are you at emotionally these days? How are you feeling?
I'm in a real good place, because I feel like having let go of the need to have a relationship and heal and please my mother, and make it something that it's not. Letting that go was a huge thing for me. And then having my wonderful dad pass away was a huge change for me too, because he was I could be daddy's little girl as long as he was alive, but now I'm like the matriarch all of a sudden. I'm I'm a grandma. I have 2 granddaughters, I have 3 children, and I've created my own little family, and we're healthy. We love each other, we talk. We have these really sweet, like even-keeled, loving, gentle, supportive conversations among ourselves, and that's what I wanted from my parents, my mother especially. But, when you don't get it from one place, you create it, or you get it from another place. And that's what I wanted to give my kids growing up, and of course I made my mistakes, but I did much better than my mom did, I think.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love the little family you've created. I love that.
Yeah. And they're all artists. Isn't that amazing?
I was going to ask, did you get that gene too?
I did. I did.
Oh.
I'm all sorts of crazy stuff. I do a little music, a little dance, a little theater, painting, drawing, poetry, writing. I love writing. It's just like exploded in me. It just came into this, one body and I can do anything. If I focus on one thing, I can do it really well. But I'm kind of
Oh,
like the artistic jack of all trades. And then my children are also wonderful artists. They're writers, they're musicians. My daughter in China, she went to Beijing and now she's an actress.
wow.
And my oldest is a tattoo artist. My youngest writes beautifully, is an amazing writer and very creative. The three of them.
Yes.
My youngest, all three girls, three daughters.
Oh.
And my grandchildren are also artists, so the gene is strong. So I guess they got their wish. And then when I asked Dad, well, because I wanted to get all three perspectives, I got Cedric's, which was they had planned it. It was an intended conception, and they chose him because of his artistic genes. My mom said no. It was just a pure passionate thing, and we fell in love. I was posing for a painting, and we ended up having an affair. And then my dad's like, I said, what happened? He's like, what do you think happened? I said, no, I mean, like, what was the scenario surrounding it? He's like, it was the 60s. What do you think? Everybody did the swinging thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I got, three different perspectives of how I was conceived. Yeah. So everyone I've told in my family was very, very kind of nonchalant about it, very accepting. Like they didn't it didn't bother them. It wasn't like a big deal. It wasn't like, ooh, that's why you were, so different from the rest of us kind of thing. It was just like, oh, well, that happened. Oh, one thing that happened that I think you might be interested in is that before I told my mom about what I'd found out, she called me and said, have you looked on the DNA thing? Lately. I said, no, well, yeah, but I said, why are you calling? And she said, well, you notice that there's this new person on the DNA list of relatives. And she said, I didn't know if you were wondering about them. I said, who are you talking about? She said, well, it turns out that I have a half brother. So she found out, she had a DNA surprise, that my grandfather had an affair with a neighbor and they conceived a child, and he was raised pretty much as a neighbor, but she didn't know that was her half brother. And she said, I found out I had a half brother. And she said, I don't even care. My father can never be any less in my eyes. I always keep him on a pedestal. He was my dad. And I'm like, well, that's beautiful. I'm glad that you don't judge your dad for feeling that way. And I'm thinking to myself at the same time, wow, Mom, I hope you react the same way when I tell you what I found out.
Yes. I can't believe she was the one to buy you the DNA test.
Nobody can. Everybody looks at me like, are you kidding me? She bought you the DNA test and she didn't want you to find out.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But I don't think we were thinking that far ahead. Like she sure wasn't. I think she just wanted to know for herself. But yeah, getting matches is quite a thing.
Julie, if people wanted to get in touch with you, find out more about this or connect with you, could they do that?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
What would be the best way to reach you?
Well, I have an Instagram and you can message me through Instagram, or I have an email. So Instagram would probably be better. I usually answer the Instagram messages. And my handle on Instagram is Katmondieu, KATMONDIEU.
I'll put your Instagram handle down below in the show notes if anyone wants to connect with you via the DM system on Instagram. Yeah. Julie, thank you so much. I identified a lot with your story. Many parts are very similar. I was nodding my head along listening to you. Thank you so much for setting time aside and doing this with me today. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. Thanks for doing what you do, because, I think it's important for us all to get our stories out there and for us to connect as a community. It's empowering, because I've felt so outside and alone a lot of my life, and I didn't know why. And I found out what I found out, and it makes sense now.
These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come heal with us.